This is the 10th year since my death. In 10 years, Winfield married the girl he cared about most, had a successful career and a happy family. In the past 10 years, he finally gave up searching for my whereabouts, suppressed the sharp spikes on his body, and became a steady and taciturn middle-aged man. I watched him return home tiredly, hugging his well-behaved and lovely son, and eating amid his wife's virtuous and gentle nagging. There is no trace of my existence in my life, but my soul is still bound to him, waiting for the day when my body, which was buried alive by his wife, is discovered, or when he truly forgets me. 01. The secretary opened the door and came in, reminding, "Winfield, the time is up." Winfield took off his glasses, rubbed his eyebrows, took the peak flow meter from the secretary's hand, pointed it at the blowing port, took a deep breath and blew. 85%, normal value. After the secretary recorded it, he checked the month's data from top to bottom and said with a smile, "It's maintained well. Dr. Sam will definitely be very happy." Winfield looked helpless, rubbed his tired face and said to her, "Thank you, I got off work on time today." "I understand." The secretary nodded respectfully and stepped back. Winfield leaned back in his chair, lost his mind for a while, got up to wash up, put on his sportswear, went downstairs and drove to the river. This city that we all wanted to escape from was divided into east and west parts by a wide river. 3 years after my death, Winfield gradually developed the habit of jogging on the riverside boulevard. It's early spring and the cherry blossoms haven't bloomed yet. The air by the river is fresh, and he can enjoy a brief period of free breathing without wearing a mask. I followed him slowly, and a long, thin, translucent line was connected between my body and Winfield's back, like a kite, being carried by him to float comfortably in the wind. An old man who was squatting by the river watching his grandson fishing raised his head and said hello from a distance. "Hey, it's almost here." I waved to him too. "Yeah, it won't be long." The old man smiled and touched his grandson's head through the void. The line on his chest became a little thinner visibly to the naked eye. He sighed. "Well, I wish I had forgotten it earlier." There was still water dripping from the ends of his hair and the corners of his clothes, but his eyes when looking at his grandson were kind and gentle. It was a water ghost whose body had not been recovered for 3 years. "Yeah." My eyes returned to Winfield. He ran less than 4 kilometers, and his face was already flushed. He pressed his knees and panted for a moment, then raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead. I looked at his familiar and boring background, feeling depressed. "It's been 10 years, no matter how much I hate you, it's enough. Why don't you let me go?" 02. Only after I died once did I realize how important funerals are to a dead person. A soul that has not been marked or monument is an innocent ghost without an identity code. It cannot be reborn until all the living people it has interacted with have accepted its death. Over the past 10 years, one after another, the lines of fate between me and other relatives and friends have been severed. Only Winfield, the ex-husband who should hate me the most, has been dragging my soul, making me unable to live in peace even after death. I have been angry, complained, and even tried to turn into a ghost and get into his dream like the story says, but the facts tell me that dead is dead, and dead ghosts cannot affect living people. All I can do is wait, waiting for the day my body buried deep in the ground is discovered, or waiting for Winfield to fully realize that I will no longer appear. After wandering around for 2 more times, Winfield finally made up his mind to go home. In the name of working overtime, he didn't go back for 2 weeks. When the car arrived at home, the family and the nanny happily stood at the door to pick it up. The sweet-looking boy with 2 dimples rushed over and threw himself on his lap, hugging him tightly and calling him daddy as hard as he could. His wife hugged his arm and blamed him for losing weight again and focusing on work all day long. She didn't know how much she and her children missed him. Winfield smiled apologetically, with a few fine lines appearing in the corners of his eyes, making his cold, gloomy, world-weary face appear gentler. He picked up his son with one hand and held his wife with the other, like a mature and steady man. A good family man walks into his own warm and comfortable haven. I was pulled by that damn cord and forced to sit down in the living room and watch the family dining under the carefully arranged candlelight. The hostess, who looks similar to me but lacks a mole on her right eye, was enthusiastically introducing her new dish. When she put her chopsticks into the Winfield bowl, Her face suddenly changed and she apologized nervously. "I'm sorry. I forgot. You can't smell candle fragrance." Winfield put his fist against his nose and endured it again and again before he coughed. He waved his hand and said, "It's okay. You guys eat first. I'll take some medicine." In this house, the aerosol spray used to treat allergic asthma is only available in his bedroom. The distance from the living room to his bedroom is more than enough with the current line length. I nestled on the sofa with peace of mind, admiring the well-maintained face of my dear twin sister, turning from white to green, and then from green to purple. Finally, she slammed her chopsticks, slapped her son on the head and cursed angrily. "Eat, eat, eat. Just eat. Go and see how your father is doing." 03. Samantha has only cared about herself since she was a child. We are twin sisters. I was born less than a minute earlier than her, but we have completely different personalities. Just like her name, Samantha is talkative, cheerful, and lively, with a small mouth as sweet as honey, which can make all the adults who meet her happy. But I am taciturn and dull. When I stand in front of others, I stutter nervously when I speak. But this does not prevent our parents from pouring the same love into us, especially Mom. She suffers from pulmonary heart disease and is allergic to more than 20 kinds of powdery particles. She has always been like a delicate flower, carefully raised in the greenhouse by her grandfather. After marrying her father, she was even more strictly protected and did not dare to let her go out easily. After our mother gave birth to us, her body became even more fragile and she was bedridden for a long time. But as long as she had energy, she would call us over, kiss our faces, rub our hair, and tell us stories in a soft voice. Samantha is wild-minded and can't bear her temper. She often runs out when she hears something. I cherish the time I spend with my mother. Every time I go there, I wash myself clean and put on fresh clothes to avoid exposing her to allergens. My house is very big, but because my mother is ill, we rarely let outsiders in. In order to take care of us, my father hired a long-term nanny. Samantha has a very good relationship with her nanny Matilda. She always pesters her to kiss and hug her, like a poor child who lacks maternal love. I don't like to join in the fun. I also know she doesn't mean it. Samantha understands very well that coquettish children have sweets to eat. She had obviously complained to me in private that Matilda smoked and there was always an unpleasant smell in her hair, which made her very uncomfortable. I was also worried about whether I should tell my father that my mother was allergic to cigarette smoke and smoking was banned in the house. Wouldn't it be dereliction of duty for her to do so? Samantha turned around and told Matilda what I said. Matilda came to me crying, saying that she was a single mother, and it was not easy to make money to support her children. She said that she would never dare to do so again, and begged me not to tell her father. I was still young at the time and couldn't bear to see other people's tears, so my heart softened and I agreed. But I don't understand that people are often different from what they appear to be. So when I was wrongly accused by her and Samantha in front of my father, I realized that from that day on I was already hated by Matilda. This is also the first and most profound lesson I have ever learned. 04. The candlelight dinner ended with Winfield's sudden departure. Samantha asked her son to visit his father, while she broke all the expensive imported scented candles on the table and threw them away. The servant changed the tableware for her with a panic expression, but before it was handed to her, a bowl of soup was thrown in her face. Samantha bit her nails restlessly and let the servant clean up the dirty floor in a panic. She got up and went to the room to change into a set of lace hollow pajamas. She sat in front of the mirror and started to touch up her makeup. Over the years, she has visited numerous beauty parlors and salons, large and small, in order to maintain her appearance. After giving birth to her son, she even went for body tightening surgery, facelift, and body care, hoping to retain Winfield's heart with her young body. I don't understand why she is so desperate. In my opinion, Winfield's heart has never changed. Even during the years when I was married, he never stopped thinking about her. It's just that after I disappeared, I went crazy for a while and became a little cold towards her. But what's the hindrance? She is also Winfield's only legitimate wife, and Winfield has always been clean outside and has never had an affair with any woman. Not enough. It's a little funny when I think about my past self. Samantha was being too harsh on herself. Why bother putting yourself through so much torture just to hang on to a heartless man? At night, Winfield patiently put his son to sleep. When he turned around, he saw the well-dressed Samantha, wearing a sexy nightgown, swaying in the bedroom, waiting for him. I had no interest in watching the couple play with each other, so they floated to the second floor and stayed in the room where I once lived. The room is still the same as when I left it. On the black mother-of-pearl bookshelf are old editions of books that I bought from all over the world, and in the corner is an Italian harpsichord covered with a towel. I am a nostalgic person and I really like these exquisite antiques. When I was still alive, I wanted to open a second-hand store in a quiet town in Northern Europe. This wish was supposed to come true after Samantha came back from the United States and Winfield and I successfully divorced. But unfortunately it didn't work out. After struggling with these two lunatics for a long time, I was eventually killed tragically by their madness. Samantha is the mastermind, and Winfield is the accomplice. It would be best for these two colluding men and women to be tied together forever and stop harming others. I smiled maliciously and heard Samantha's hysterical noise coming from downstairs. Not surprisingly, Winfield rejected her again. The excuse he used was the same. He was a chronically ill man and was overly excited, which was likely to trigger asthma. No matter how horny Samantha is, she can't let her husband die suddenly on her, right? This reason has been used by Winfield for nearly 10 years since their marriage. Samantha went from being understanding at the beginning to doubting to questioning to being unable to accept hysteria. As a result, Winfield returns home less and less frequently. But I was the only one who knew he was lying. His condition is obviously stable and he can go jogging. What's wrong with going to bed? But I don't know why he told this lie. During the years when he was with me, his illness was even more severe than it is now. It was not obvious during the day, but he would suddenly wake up 2 or 3 times at night. He would sit up and take a deep breath. He always had Serotype by his bedside. At that time, his character was still very bad. He was constantly agitated due to the pain and suffering, and he always showed the hatred that wanted to destroy everything. I didn't want to provoke him, but I was afraid that he would suddenly suffocate and die in his sleep like my mother, so I had to take care of him several times. Later, he took the initiative to come to my room and insisted on hugging me and burying his face in the side of my neck, saying that he could sleep peacefully in this way. Now the woman he loves most is by his side. Why shouldn't he seek comfort from her? How puzzling. 05. The suffocating atmosphere lasted from Friday night to Sunday. Perhaps out of guilt, Winfield asked his secretary to book a panoramic seat at the Jongen Hotel and take his wife and children there for a reconciliation dinner. But the call from Samantha's house came unexpectedly. My father suffered from high blood pressure and was hospitalized last night. The nanny said that her father didn't want to tell them, but she was really worried and begged her and her uncle to go to the hospital. Samantha muttered, saying that the old man would get sick sooner rather than later, and he had to wait until they went out to make people sick again. Winfield's face darkened as if he wanted to scold her, but he held it back and immediately asked the driver to change route and go to the Municipal People's Hospital. I was uneasy and walked into the ward with them. Dad was much older. His hair was almost completely white. His skin was sagging on his thin face, and there were 2 deep nasolabial folds at the corners of his mouth. He glared at the nanny reproachfully. The nanny calmly raised his back and took the supplement from Winfield. "Dad." Samantha threw herself at him coquettishly and said angrily, "Why didn't you tell me last night? You worried me to death." Master Z hugged her daughter lovingly, touched her grandson's head and said with a smile, "It's not a big deal, I don't want you to worry about it." Then he looked at Winfield. "I have lost a lot of weight, have I been busy recently? Look at my unsatisfactory body. I have caused you trouble again and again for so many years. What are you talking about?" "Dad, as long as you are fine, thank God." Winfield said politely and respectfully, "You guys talk first, I'll go see the doctor." He left, affecting the only thread of fate on my chest. Looking at the warm scene of a loving father and a filial daughter in the ward, I only felt a little numb in my heart. Needless to say, Samantha's relationship with her father was severed not long after my death. I know he has always hated me because of that misunderstanding. After his helpless stepmother disappeared while collecting money, Samantha also ran away to the United States. He was so angry that he became ill and his life was hanging by a thread. The only person he could rely on was me. the eldest daughter who he hated and disappointed the most. In order to save the company, I married Winfield, worked during the day, and stayed with him in the hospital at night. It took more than 2 years to drag him back from the brink of death and take care of him until he was healthy. Until Samantha came back, I went home and told him that I was leaving. He just snorted and said that since I was leaving, I shouldn't come back again. He didn't want to be mad at his biologically related daughter. Later I really died, but he was made sick by me again. Maybe because she hated me even more, she quickly accepted that I had disappeared like my stepmother. The line of fate between father and daughter was also broken. Silent and natural, Winfield saw the doctor come back, and soon left with his wife and children. I stood at the door of the ward and saw the nanny returning from sending someone away. My father yelled at the top of his lungs, "Are you more deaf than me? Didn't I tell you to throw away that damn bunch of flowers? I don't want to see them again." The nanny held back her tears in frustration and quickly picked up the beautifully wrapped bunch of yellow carnations and threw them into the trash can. The thin threads on my chest tugged, as if my soul was torn apart in an instant. "You still can't forget it, Dad," I thought with a wry smile. "Until I die, you won't know who killed my mother." 06. My mother died suddenly on a very ordinary summer day when Samantha and I were 7 years old. We are about to leave home and go to elementary school in a faraway city. Samantha was chirping and wanted to go out to buy new clothes. Samantha and I looked very similar before we were 12 years old. In order to show no favoritism, our parents bought us clothes that were basically the same color and style. Samantha had complained about this a long time ago, and this time she made the fuss even more fierce while her father was away. Matilda had no choice but to call her father. After getting permission, she asked the driver to drive us to the downtown business district. I know Samantha just wants to go out and play. Generally, brands will come to our doorsteps every once in a while to deliver new seasonal styles for us to choose from, so there is no need to go to such a big trouble. But the summer vacation is so long that Samantha can no longer stay at home. Sure enough, after a few early rounds in the mall, she was clamoring to go to the amusement park. It was still early, and her father would not get home until evening. Matilda couldn't help but said hello to the driver and agreed. By the way, he also went home to pick up his son. Stefan is 2 years older than us. He is a very cute kid with milky white skin and a pair of deep dimples on his lips when he smiles. When Samantha saw him, she screamed like a brother, holding hands and refusing to let go. Matilda bought a VIP ticket and could take the fast track for any project. I glided behind them like a tail, and soon got bored and didn't want to play anymore. Matilda took me to the visitor center and bought me some juice, while she followed her son and Samantha. When the park was about to close, the three of them finally came back, and Samantha was holding a beautifully wrapped bag in her hand. "A gift for Mom," she said with a showy smile. I was a little annoyed and hesitated whether to buy one too, but Matilda reminded me that the time was up and I had to go back quickly. On the way, I asked Samantha, "What did you buy?" "Secret," Samantha said mysteriously. "I'll give it to Mom myself later, don't you?" "To come." I know she is trying to act like a spoiled brat again, but I didn't buy anything. I didn't want to disappoint my mother, so I could only agree reluctantly. After arriving home, Samantha happily ran to her mother's room with the gift. When I came back, I asked her, "How was it? Is Mom happy?" But she pursed her lips and said, "Mom is sleeping." I put the things on her bedside and came out. "Forget it, let's play hide and seek." Matilda secretly brought her son in, promised the bodyguard that he would never come in, and let him play with us in the garden. The bodyguard had known her for a long time, and Stefan was a child, so he turned a blind eye. Our garden, because of my mother, never grows flowers. We only have dwarf hollies that are evergreen all year round. They are also pruned by gardeners from time to prevent them from having a chance to pollinate. Samantha and I hid in a maze of dwarf holly bushes. Wherever I go, Samantha follows me. "I have a way to prevent him from catching you." She winked in a ghostly manner, forcing me to hide behind her without any doubt. Stefan came quickly, and Samantha suddenly screamed and rushed out, startling him. The two of them still maintained the excitement of playing in the amusement park, and unconsciously held their little hands together again. I was still hiding in the bushes, watching their footsteps getting further and further away. Stefan asked, I've been looking all over. Where is your sister hiding? Samantha grumbled and refused to tell him. My legs were numb from squatting. I heard the chirping of cicadas not far away, and I closed my eyes in sleepiness. When I woke up, it was already dark. I crawled out of the bushes and heard the house in a mess, someone crying and someone calling my name. I ran in blankly and saw a bunch of people I didn't recognize standing in the living room. Dad sat on the sofa and cried bitterly. Samantha was held dumbly in Matilda's arms. The driver, bodyguard, and servants on duty today all stood timidly in front of Dad with their heads down, not daring to say a word. Dr. Sam, who had been treating my mother, took off his gloves and sighed. I can't help it, he's gone. Cheer up, there are 2 children here. Dad burst into tears and gasped. He picked up the fake bouquet on the table and threw it to the ground. He shouted angrily, "Who is it? Who killed Annie with this damn thing?" There was a buzz in my head. Quite Mother's name. Mom, she's dead? 07. Under Dad's rage, the servant finally said tremblingly, Sir, I saw a lady carrying something in this afternoon, but I didn't see clearly which one it was. The living room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. After a while, Samantha cried loudly, pointed at me and said, It's my sister. My sister insisted on buying a gift for my mother. Whoa, it was my sister who killed my mother. My whole body was cold and my legs, which had been numb for a long time, suddenly softened, and I fell to the ground with a thud. No, it's not me. It's Samantha. Everyone's eyes fell on me like knives, slicing at my young and fragile nerves. No, it's not me. I was extremely frightened and stammered, It's Samantha. It's Samantha. Dad's face was stained with tears and hatred, and his sharp eyes scanned us one by one like an eagle. I haven't taken care of you for a long time. You have grown up. You have learned to lie. He picked up the bouquet of plastic fake flowers, came over and slapped me and Samantha hard on each face several times, causing bloodstains to appear on my face. At the same time, I could smell the pungent smell of low-quality fragrance coming from the fake flowers. Matilda held Samantha in her arms distressedly, looking uncertain. She was about to say something, but Samantha was trembling all over and hugged her neck tightly. Matilda paused, her face turned pale, and she finally made up her mind and shouted with all her might, Yes, it's Miss Catherine. It's Miss Catherine. Sir, I shouldn't have taken my 2 children to the amusement park. It was my lack of consideration. If you want to hit me, hit me. Samantha started to cry at the right time. It's my sister. It's my sister. Dad, it hurts so much when you hit me. Almost instantly, Dad grabbed my neck, lifted me up from the ground. After the doctor's persuasion, he still dragged me to my mother's room with a livid face. I almost suffocated, and there were so many words stuck in my throat that I couldn't say them out anymore. In the familiar room, my mother was lying on the bed, her face covered with a white cloth, and she seemed to be still sleeping peacefully. Dad pushed my face in front of my mother, lifted up the white cloth, and forced me to look directly at my mother's swollen, blue and deformed face. Look, I'll let you take a good look. Dad's eyes were blood red as if he was crazy. Because of you, just because of you, the woman I loved most died on the bed like this. She has suffered for so many years. What did I do wrong? In the end, I was killed by my own daughter. But I could no longer hear his words, and only my mother's horrific face, still twisted and in pain, was left in my eyes. The remaining warmth in her body was still there, but her heartbeat had stopped and her eyes would never open again. He is a dead man with a hideous face. In the past, I only had her gentle smile in my memory, but after this time, I was always awakened by her dead look in my dreams. Dad started hating me from then on, but equally I hate him immensely. Not because he wrongly accused me without verification and unilaterally believed the nanny and Samantha who were full of lies, but because he destroyed the mother I cherished the most. Later, I plucked up the courage to ask Dr. Sam and learned that my mother had acute asthma caused by the smell of fragrance, and also had a heart attack caused by asthma. The time from onset to sudden death was less than an hour. At that time, I was still nestled in a short holly bush, falling asleep amidst the noisy chirping of cicadas in summer. Later, I was buried alive by shovels of earth by Samantha and Stefan. At the end of my life, I felt that my mouth and nose were blocked, and the air was slowly drained from my lungs. Only then did I understand my mother's pain before death. Dad was right. What did Mom do wrong? What did I do wrong? They both died in the hands of my stupid and greedy good-for-nothing sister. 08. Winfield reconciled with Samantha. This was expected of me after all, since he was a kid. He would always try to coax her in a low voice after a quarrel. The line connecting Winfield and me became thinner and longer. I sincerely pray that the day will come soon when it will truly be disconnected. Samantha got another black card and happily contacted the little sisters for medical beauty treatments. Winfield dragged me back to the company to be his money printing machine for 10 years. This week's schedule was a bit busy, and Winfield was extremely busy, but his secretary knocked on the door and said that his brother suddenly came and was making trouble outside. Winfield breathed a sigh of relief, fixed the messy hair on his forehead back with hairspray, tightened his tie, put on his vest, and adjusted his sitting posture meticulously before speaking to let him in. Clayton is similar to Samantha. He is a well-known playboy in the circle. He has always worried Winfield since he was a child, but he can't kick Clayton out just because Clayton is his stepmother's son, and his father used to have much higher expectations for Clayton than for him. Brother, the project has gone bad again, and the people under my command can't be used at all. Clayton sat on the sofa and complained as soon as he arrived. I moved away silently to avoid being infected by his arrogance and stupidity across the void. Winfield put his thumb on his forehead, obviously having a severe headache. The ones I gave you are all people who have been with me. Why can't you use them? They don't listen to me. Clayton crossed his legs on his knees and shook his head. How can any of my subordinates not listen to their leaders, right? After all, I am also a graduate of a first-class business school. I have a higher education than my brother. But they treat me like a child. Are you angry? Clayton, Winfield said while holding back his temper, if you don't want to do anything, just take your pocket money and go home honestly. Your parents are old, and you should have someone to take care of you. I'm busy outside, so you can take care of your family. Hold up. Clayton sneered. What? You want me to hand over my shares and live on your kindness from now on? Brother, I am younger than you, but I am not stupid. If you hadn't stepped in back then, Catherine would have been there long ago. Just marry me. How can you? Is it your turn to sit in that position and boss me around? As soon as he said my name, I knew something bad was going to happen. Sure enough, after this experience, the line of fate suddenly became thicker and shorter. I was suddenly pulled in front of Winfield, just a few steps away from his face that was twisted with rage. This is truly a disaster. It was so fast that I didn't even have time to react. Winfield abruptly broke the pen in his hand, and his pair of thick black eyes seemed to have returned to his youth, with extreme coldness and sinisterness. I told you, don't mention her name in front of me. Oh, you haven't found it yet? Clayton looked at him with raised eyebrows as if he was watching a show. Admit it, brother, you don't love your current wife at all, and Catherine is the hurdle you can't get over in your life. Half of the pen flew towards him with ink dots flying around, hitting him hard in the face again and again. Winfield pointed to the door with one finger. His voice became very soft due to anger. Get out now, immediately. Clayton was not afraid at all. He stood up and straightened his suit in a leisurely manner and mocked. That's right, this is what you look like. Brother, after so many years, aren't you tired of pretending? Even I feel pity for you. After he finished speaking, he walked out with light steps. Before leaving, he added arrogantly, hurry up and take the medicine. You will have to work as a slave for the Lau He family for the rest of your life. Clayton loves to talk about trains. I watched boredly as Winfield gasped violently, took out the aerosol in the drawer with shaking hands, bit the inhaler and took the medicine with difficulty, and thought to myself, how could he not love his current wife? He simply loved deeply and fiercely, like the reincarnation of a lover. Sometimes I even wonder if his brain is really abnormal due to constant lack of oxygen. 09. When I first met Winfield, I actually had a very good impression of him. It was the second year after my mother passed away, and my father brought a young woman home, saying that she was a stepmother for us. After her mother died, Matilda was also fired. He often stayed away from home due to work, so he only found 2 servants to take care of Samantha and me. After his grandfather slapped him in the face at his mother's funeral, he never had any contact with this place again. Both uncles were overseas and would only send emails every few weeks to ask perfunctorily how we were doing. I often shut myself in the house, close the thick curtains, eat very little, and don't talk to anyone. At first, Samantha would knock on the door timidly, or occasionally call my name, but as time went by, she gradually stopped paying attention to me. During that time, she was just like me, a child who lacked love. But I cannot forgive her betrayal. My father met my stepmother in business. She is very young, has a gentle and intellectual appearance, and when she smiles, she looks a lot like my mother. When she met us for the first time, she was wearing a very simple cotton skirt. Her long silky hair was tucked behind her two delicate ears. It was impossible to tell whether she was wearing makeup. For some reason, I felt subconsciously disgusted when I saw her. I just felt that her smile was fake, as if there was a thick mask covering it. But Samantha couldn't be happier. Like a baby bird, she spread her wings excitedly and flew to her stepmother, hugged her thighs tightly with her hands, buried her face in her belly and shouted, "Mom, Mom, I finally have a mother again." The adults around him had red eyes when they heard this. I stared wide-eyed at the proud smile she showed when she turned her head. I was so angry that I turned around and ran back to the room. When the door was closed, I heard my father yelling outside, "You unruly beast! We can eat it ourselves and leave her alone." Since then, I have never eaten at the same table as them. This twisted family, as if Samantha had always been the only child, completely excluded me. Under the deliberate doting of her stepmother, Samantha's character became more and more unruly. She had completely put aside her guilt about me and began to strive for individuality, hating everything we had in common. She cut up my clothes of the same style as hers, poked out the eyes of my stuffed animals, and even threatened me to cut off her naturally curly hair. No servant dared to help me, and my stepmother turned a blind eye to our noise. Samantha is even more confident that in the end, I only kept the new dress that my mother picked out for us on her birthday before she died. It has been 2 years since her death. I have grown taller and my ankle-length skirt can only cover my knees, but I never wanted to wear it once. Samantha was very proud and said that there would be guests at home soon, and she asked me to be more honest. My stepmother comes from a business background and likes to entertain business partners at home and maintain private relationships. She sized up the situation. She was Dad's capable assistant at the company and Samantha's gentle mother at home, but her attitude towards me was polite and cold. In the past, I never left the house when guests came to my house, but today, perhaps because I was stimulated by the flowers arranged everywhere and Samantha's arrogance, I wanted to go out for a walk. After making up my mind, I put on the remaining skirt, avoided the servants, and slipped into the garden through the back door. The garden has long since changed its appearance and is filled with all kinds of flowers and plants. It has obviously been carefully taken care of by designers and gardeners. I walked straight through fences and flower walls one after another, stubbornly looking for the dwarf holly bush in my memory. When he turned the corner, he saw a pair of feet wearing leather shoes standing on the ground, struggling. The sound of hissing like death came in waves, and I suddenly remembered the pain my mother was in when she was sick, so I hurried over to check. A half-grown boy in a suit was lying on his side and twitching. He covered his mouth and nose tightly with his hands, tears and saliva streaming all over his face. There was an aerosol bottle with the cap unopened lying on the grass behind him. It was Winfield in his youth. 10. My brain buzzed. Reason told me that I should go find an adult quickly, but my body had reflexively acted on its own. I rushed up to pick up the aerosol, pulled off the cap, opened the boy's hands, lifted up a corner of his skirt to cover his mouth and nose and urged, "Breathe it out." The boy's face turned red from holding his breath, and he exhaled the air from his lungs as I moved. With quick eyesight and quick hands, I inserted the nozzle of the inhaler into his mouth and pressed it slowly. Suck! The young man's eyes were moist. He held his breath for 7 or 8 seconds after inhaling the medicine, and then slowly spit it out. After doing this several times, he finally recovered. My back was soaked with sweat, and I sat on the ground exhausted. Ventolin? Why are you using this? Dr. Sam said it has side effects, and it is best to switch to Seretide or Symbicort. The young man got up with difficulty. His eyes were dark and gloomy. He covered his nose and turned his back to the wind. Follow me. I led him to run into the open space. Near the east gate of the yard, beside a pond covered by trees, we panted and sat down together. "You saved my life, thank you." The boy sat on the bluestone tiles and hugged his right knee. I shook my head, squatted down to wash the stains on the hem of my skirt and asked, "Aren't you going to wash your face?" "I'm allergic to the cold," the young man said indifferently. His face and neck, which were illuminated by the reflection of the pool water, were delicate and white, like a porcelain doll without any temperature. "Oh, then it must be very hard for you." I lowered my head and said lowly, "My mother is the same. She can't touch cold water, smell flowers, or hold cats, dogs, and small animals. She obviously likes it very much." "Are you from this family?" The young man frowned. "What are you doing in the garden? Aren't you a guest?" I also wondered, "What are you doing in the garden? If you don't pay attention to this disease, why don't your family look at you?" The young man pursed his lips, and a look of hatred that destroyed everything appeared on his beautiful but gloomy face, but for just a moment, it was replaced by another kind of irritation. "My dad doesn't want to see me. This time I'm accompanying that woman to show off my youngest son. I don't want to accompany them in pretentious acting, calling them mom or brother. I find it disgusting." I approached him in surprise. "Me too." The small resonance immediately made me like him. "My sister and stepmother are so annoying, as well as my father." I put my arms on my legs and drooped my feet in disappointment. It's the same with or without me in this family. They all only care about themselves. The boy said boredly, "That's why my mother left home and didn't want me anymore." "Well, that's what adults do." "Then your mother is quite bad." I sympathized a little. "My mother is very good. Look at this dress, she chose it for me. The rest were cut off by my sister. Maybe it's rare to meet a soulmate." Once I opened my chat box, I couldn't hold it back. I stopped stammering in front of strangers and talked a lot. The young man listened attentively from beginning to end, occasionally interjecting a question or two, and after receiving the answer, he remained silent with a stern face. As I talked, I thought I had offended him, so when I got nervous, I suddenly closed my mouth. The young man waited for a moment and frowned slightly. "Why don't you say anything? What happened to playing hide and seek with your sister?" I laughed again. "She hid me behind her back and went out by herself. Is there something wrong? Didn't you expose yourself? She likes that kid, I can tell." This topic made me a little shy, so I quickly stopped and asked him, "What about you?" "I have nothing to say." The young man looked gloomy. "My mother is gone. My father likes a healthy younger brother. My younger brother is a big idiot. It's over." I burst out laughing. "But one day I will be better than my brother and my father." The young man said seriously, "Just wait, I will prove myself." I nodded heavily. The young man looked at me again. "What about you? What is your wish?" At this time, someone was shouting Master Winfield, or Master Winfield, from behind. I pushed him. "Did I call you? Let's go." But the young man grabbed my hand tightly. "My name is Winfield. What's your name?" "Catherine." I smiled and answered him very clearly. "My name is Catherine Winfield, and we have been friends from now on." 11. My father soon found out about me escaping from the room that night. The guest's eldest son was nowhere to be found. When I came back, my skirt was wet again. My arms and legs were covered with red marks from walking through the bushes. My hair was also covered with fine fallen leaves. "Vet, what the hell have you done?" Dad was furious. Samantha snickered and hid behind her stepmother and said deliberately, "Sister is so shy. I saw my sister and that little brother going into the woods." My father became even more angry. He got a feather duster used by servants for cleaning and slapped my calf hard. "How old are you? You already know how to embarrass me." Embarrass me? Every time he said it, there was an extra red mark on my calf. I had tears in my eyes and was trying to hold it back, but I saw Samantha make a face at me from an angle that no one could see, and pointed at the long hair on my shoulders with malicious intent, making a scissor sign with her 2 fingers. Action. Dash at that moment. I went crazy. My body was dominated by the boiling and exploding brain, and I roared like a ghost and rushed towards her. The stepmother screamed and ran away. Dad's hands were also frozen in the air, and he stared blankly at us, twisted into a ball. I pinched Samantha's neck fiercely and knocked the back of her head to the ground again and again. I watched her pale little face turn red and purple in pain, and gradually overlapped with the face of her mother's death. The long dormant beast in my heart broke free from its shackles and came out of the darkness, licking its fangs. There was a pop sound and my face was slapped sideways, and the strength of my hand did not loosen. My father and stepmother screamed and pulled me away, nervously holding the suffocating Samantha in their arms to check. You not only killed your mother, you also wanted to kill your sister. Dad was trembling all over and looked at me with fear. You are really a devil. I sat on the cold floor and looked at them indifferently. I also saw the corpse of me who was once young, timid, and eager to be loved, lying in front of me. I was sent to a prison-like boarding school. Before leaving, I looked in the mirror, pulled up the long hair that Samantha had pulled, and cut it with a click. 12. After this time, it took a long time before Winfield and I met again. At that time, Samantha and I were already 16 years old. Because I had been performing good all year round, I was diagnosed by the doctor as having recovered and could go out to study. When I was released, my whole body was completely changed and my head was in a mess. Short hair, wearing an inconspicuous shirt and trousers, and ugly black-rimmed glasses on his pale and thin face. He looks dull, boring, androgynous. The family only sent a driver to pick him up. I dragged my thin luggage, and as soon as I returned, I heard Samantha quarreling with her father. After not seeing her for a few years, she became even more beautiful. Her long, slightly curly hair was dyed maroon, her face was lightly made up, and a loose nightgown hung on her thin white shoulders, faintly revealing the girl's exquisite curves. Dad rubbed his brows in annoyance and said he didn't agree with her staying on campus. Catherine can do it, so why can't I? Samantha pulled his arm and acted coquettishly again after making a fuss. Dad, just let me be independent. I have grown up. I pulled the suitcase and passed in front of them without saying hello, and went straight back to my room. Our family arranged for us to go to an international high school 3 hours drive from home. This school is very famous and cooperates with many universities in Europe and the United States. As long as you can maintain your grades, it will not be a problem to apply for admission after graduation. I still chose boarding, but after Samantha had a lot of emotions, my family bought her a spacious 2-bedroom house near the school where land was very valuable. Dad called me over, smoked a cigarette in a depressed manner for a while, and then said, "Go live with her. Samantha has made a lot of bad friends in the past few years. I don't worry about her being alone outside." I said nothing. I originally didn't want to care about you, you know? Dad looked unkind and put out the cigarette but on the table. You have a criminal record. If you commit another crime, you will have to be sent to a juvenile detention center. If I hadn't thought about you, I would have been quiet for 10 months. I was too lazy to give birth to a child. Okay. I interrupted him and said indifferently, I have nothing else to do. I'm going to pack my things. What I have learned the most in the past few years is to control my emotions. I had known that I had no choice in this family, so I stopped trying to resist. It doesn't matter. I will continue until I achieve my goal. Samantha's luggage is more than 3 times the size of mine. On the first day of school, the servants kept moving her boxes of various sizes in, occupying 2/3 of the house. When I saw the books that they had finally arranged neatly being thrown around randomly, I finally couldn't help it and went downstairs to find Samantha. Samantha was standing on the lawn with a tall, thin boy wearing a mask, holding his hand affectionately, complaining dissatisfiedly. "Brother Clayton, this crappy place we found is small and remote. You still have to live with that psychotic sister. What will I do in the future?" The boy smiled through the mask and casually pressed her head. "It's okay, I'm covering you. If she dares to cause trouble again, just tell me." I looked at his slightly familiar eyebrows, hesitated for a moment and called, "Winfield." The two immediately turned their heads to look over. "Why do you know Brother Clayton?" Samantha hugged the boy's arm warily and asked him, "When did you two meet?" I stopped and realized that in the past few years since I disappeared, their relationship had become closer than mine. Winfield looked at me with a frown. His eyes were strange and cold, and I guessed that he might have forgotten the past many years ago. But unexpectedly, with a calm expression, he pushed Samantha away and walked toward me casually. "Catherine." I looked at him steadily. Winfield's body is much taller, His complexion is still fair, and his Adam's apple is obvious on his clean neck. Above the mask, the pair of thick black eyes became thinner and longer, and the double eyelids drooped lazily, revealing the melancholy and irritability unique to people who have been ill for a long time. "Are you the psychopath who killed your mother?" Winfield's clear voice sounded lazily. He put his hands in his pockets, turned his face mockingly, and said lightly, "That's really unlucky. I'm warning you, stay away from Samantha in the future, otherwise, don't blame me for causing trouble for you. People are going to change. Just like him, just like me, just like Samantha." If young Winfield asks the question about wishes again at this time, I will definitely answer him like this: I want to leave you sick-brained people as quickly and as far away as possible. Teen. Winfield is something of a star at school. Not only because of his cold and handsome appearance and the weird appearance of wearing a mask every day, but also because while he resisted being indifferent to everyone, he was only doting and close to Samantha. They have no clear relationship with the outside world and are only referred to as brother and sister. But anyone with a discerning eye can see the love in Winfield's eyes when he looks at Samantha. However, within a year, Samantha gradually began to stay up at night. She is a child who grew up immersed in love. She is independent for the first time and is full of curiosity about everything unknown. Those so-called friends are the rich kids that Samantha hung out with when she was in junior high school. They took her to smoke, drink, and go to clubs, and surrounded her like a princess to satisfy her growing vanity. This also triggered a fierce quarrel between the two. Several times I saw Winfield being so angry with Samantha that he became ill. He trembled and took out his aerosol and inhaled desperately. Samantha was scared at first, but as time went by, she began to wonder if he was faking it, and even ridiculed his illness. Winfield's self-esteem was frustrated, and he refused to come to her for several months. But then I heard that Samantha was causing trouble in the bar, so I hurriedly ran away. One day in the second half of my sophomore year of high school, at 2 o'clock in the night, I opened the door and asked him to carry Samantha, who was very drunk, to the bed in the room. Winfield was panting from exhaustion. He took out the aerosol with shaking hands, only to find that it had been used up. I walked over to the table, took out a new bottle from the drawer, and threw it to him. "How did you?" I knew this would happen sooner or later. I picked up a pillow to prop up Samantha's head, turned on the air conditioner, set it to ventilation mode, and walked back to the living room tiredly to sit down. Winfield was silent for a long time after taking the drug. I thought he was about to fall asleep, but then I heard him suddenly say, "I don't know why I can't let her go." Winfield looked extremely confused. In just over a year, he became darker and thinner. He was tortured by illness and Samantha in turn, and he no longer looked like the green young man he once was. I felt sleepy and casually said, "Because you love her." "Love?" Winfield looked at me steadily, as if looking for the shadow of Samantha when she was awake through me. "Maybe. I just think she looks too much like me." I almost laughed, but then I thought maybe he had a point. They are all equally crazy and arrogant. I smiled indifferently, stood up, and wanted to drive him away. "It's too late, you can go back." Winfield suddenly took my hand, just like he did when we parted that night. "Catherine, I really hate you. Why have you never been nice to me? Samantha has also been bullied by you since she was a child." I asked the doctor. "Her current personality is entirely caused by the shadow of childhood." I was fixed there instantly. "So?" I stared into Winfield's eyes. "You want to teach me a lesson? Catherine, was it really you that night?" Winfield seemed to be dizzy from the smell of alcohol with red eyes and stubbornly asked, "I have thought countless times whether I remembered your names wrongly, but how could it be? Are you really the child who saved me that night? If I say yes, do you believe it?" I asked. "If I say yes, you will give up Samantha, who you have liked for so many years, and start liking me instead?" Winfield's expression went blank for a moment, and his grip on me obviously loosened. I smiled sarcastically and spread his fingers apart one by one. "Stop holding on to this little thing, Winfield. It won't affect our current relationship whether it's me or not." I walked over and opened the door, looked at him calmly, and said, "We are not friends, let alone lovers, because I have always hated Samantha, and I also hate you. Stay away from me, Winfield. It's best for you and Samantha to stay away from me." 14. Perhaps these words stimulated him. From then on, Winfield's attitude towards me became even worse. Before entering high school, my father had made it clear that I was not needed in the family company and would probably be handed over to his son-in-law, Samantha's future husband. But because of my unwillingness to admit defeat, I still took business as an elective. Winfield was originally 1 year older than me, but due to physical problems, he repeated the grade for a year, so he took classes in the same classroom as me. He was simply a lunatic, and he was determined to torture me. He would either arrive early and sit in front, blocking his view with his tall head, or he would sit behind me, stretching out his long legs and kicking my chair dishonestly during class. After enduring it for a few days, one day after class at noon, I gritted my teeth and stopped him. "What on earth do you want to do?" Winfield's sickly face smiled gloomily, and he put his legs up on the table where I was sitting. His thin and long black eyes showed unsparing malice. "Don't you hate me and don't like to talk to me? Go on, you hide." "I can't do it." "Are you out of your mind, I was about to curse, but suddenly there were whispers around me. "Clayton, what are you doing?" Samantha stood outside the door, her eyes scanning between me and Winfield suspiciously, her delicately made-up face covered with clouds. "Why haven't you come to see me these days?" Winfield smiled and lowered his legs from the table. I had no intention of messing around with them, so I packed my things and went straight out. When passing by Samantha, a girl behind her whispered, "Don't they look similar?" "Oh, didn't you know? They are the twins from Samantha's family." "No way, it's so different." Winfield's face changed slightly, and he quickly came over to drag Samantha to leave, but she violently threw him away. "Who do you think she looks like?" Samantha's face suddenly twisted as if she was punched in the center. She rushed over and grabbed the girl and slapped her. "Who do you think is similar? Who is so different? Damn it. See if I don't pull out your little bitch's tongue." The girl next to me screamed. There was chaos in the classroom. Several boys couldn't stand it and wanted to save the girl whose face was swollen from being slapped, but Winfield ran over first and pulled Samantha away with a livid face. "Isn't it a shame?" he yelled in front of everyone. "Where did you learn such nonsense?" Samantha was also crazy. She cried so much that her eye makeup was all stained. She pushed him desperately and screamed, "You didn't care about me first. It was you who didn't care about me first. Have you never liked me? Liar. You also think that do you think I look like her?" I stood outside the door watching this scene expressionlessly. Winfield's back was stiff, and his hands were shaking slightly at his sides. But not long after, he took a step forward and gently hugged her into his arms. 15. Once people give out their feelings, it is often difficult to get them back. During the years I was locked up in boarding school, I read a lot of psychology books, and there was a common word in them: empathy. Perhaps it was during those years that Winfield, who was still a teenager, unconsciously transferred his hazy emotions to Samantha because she looked so similar to me. They were noisy, separated, and reunited, but after all, they still needed each other, and they couldn't stop it even if they wanted to. But this has nothing to do with me. At the beginning, I just wanted to make a friend and never expected to get anything more from him. I still live my life as always. The curriculum of international high schools is very broad. My mother's love for classical art influenced me when I was a child. After entering high school, in addition to business studies, I also took art as an elective course. Whenever I had time, I would go to art museums and major auction houses. On the eve of graduation, my second uncle, whom I had not contacted for a long time, called me and said that he hoped I could go to London so that he could take care of me conveniently. I refused without thinking. I prefer Sweden to the UK, so I applied to the Faculty of Arts at Lund University. Of course, Samantha would rather want to go to the United States, a prosperous and free metropolis like New York. She has longed for a truly luxurious life for a long time. Before graduating from my senior year of high school, I packed my luggage, packed 2 oil paintings in my mother's room, and quietly waited for the announcement from the university. Stepmother and father are not at home. I heard that after we entered high school, my stepmother expressed that she wanted to have a child of her own, but my father refused. This created a deep rift between them. I know my father still loves my mother, and he can't bear the presence of a child who has nothing to do with her in the house. But cruel retribution soon came. Shortly after I got the admission notice, My stepmother took away the family's money and disappeared. Over the years, she has been helping my father manage the company and family finances as a hostess. When carrying money, she even embezzled all of my and Samantha's education funds. When my father came back from a business trip and found out about this, his blood pressure immediately increased and he fainted. When Samantha and I rushed to the hospital, we only saw him sitting on the bed like a rotten tree. His middle-aged face turned ashen. Samantha cried loudly and went over to hug him. She kept asking, "What should I do, Dad? What should I do with my college?" Dad's eyes were red, and he stroked her hair with trembling hands and said, "Dad will find a way. Dad will definitely be able to." But I knew there was no way around it. Sure enough, he soon asked Samantha to go out and said to me alone, "Don't think about going abroad. Choose a public university in China." I pursed my lips and said with difficulty, "I can apply for a scholarship which will basically cover it. If it doesn't work, I can ask my uncle." I said no. Dad snapped and the blood pressure number on the device rose again. "Do you want to just piss me off to death? Huh? Like your mother, no one will care about you anymore." My nails dug into the palm of my hand. I endured the pain and hatred in my heart and said softly, "Okay, I agree." I chose Hangzhou, which is far away from home. In order not to interact with them, I took the high-speed rail there with my luggage just after the summer vacation and found a hotel close to the school for monthly rent. Fortunately, I have the awareness to save money. A year ago, I invested in several antiques through my mother's connections during her lifetime. If the appreciation is considerable, maybe I can go abroad on my own in half a semester. However, because of the gap in the company, my father became an ant in a hot pot. He even put aside his dignity and called me specifically, asking me to sell the antiques now to help him return funds. Why? I had a head-on argument with him for the first time. I used the inheritance my mother left me. "You are under 18 years old now, and I am still your guardian. Dad has never been polite to me. What's more, who has raised you all these years? Dogs still know how to be loyal to their masters, and they don't let you take away their food. Just spit it out for me. What's the matter with asking for money at this critical moment?" I was shaking all over, slammed the phone, hugged my knees with my bare feet and cried. The simple hotel room was like a cold and heavy cage. I cried and screamed in the cage, and my fingernails scratched blood on the wall, but I still couldn't escape from this small space. There is no way to escape this innate blood relationship. 16. My money was taken when I was 1 month away from adulthood. When school started, I numbly went to class with the rest of the group, living in a 4-person dormitory with a private bathroom. Fortunately, my roommates and classmates are very friendly and bring some light into my world. Unfortunately, I saw Winfield again on campus. What a haunting ghost. I walked around him and walked forward. "Hey, do you know why I came to Hangzhou?" I ignored it. "Samantha is here too. She said she contacted you many times. Why are you avoiding her?" I kept walking. The evil ghost behind him kept chasing after him. Winfield was breathing rapidly, holding my arm tightly, and said urgently through the mask, "Catherine, are you really so cruel? Don't you want to hear what I have to say? Is it necessary?" I asked coldly and shook his hand away. "Winfield, why did you come and for whom did you come? Do you need to tell me? What is our relationship? Did I clearly say that I hate you?" "You." Winfield's brows twisted slightly, and layers of sweat began to appear on his forehead. "Ha!" Suddenly, he fell to the ground, curled up, his hands and feet twitching continuously, his hands tightly covering his mask, and he let out frightening gasps on the verge of death. The surrounding students were startled and came over to ask if they wanted to call 120. My eyes were blood red, and I watched the clock hand of life hanging on the counting down with his head above his head. He finally gave in and resigned himself to taking out the aerosol in his pocket. "Catherine." Winfield grabbed my wrist and called me intermittently between taking the medicine. "Do you really want to die?" I forced the inhaler into his mouth and said tiredly, "Can you please stop torturing me? I really tired. Exhausted physically and mentally. Of course I know that Samantha also came to Hangzhou. For her, the family had to go through countless connections and spend a lot of money before she was admitted to a decent second-tier college here. My dream was ruined, but she was still living a decent life. Why should I answer her calls and reply to her messages? I simply wish she would disappear from my world right away. After calming down, Winfield looked at me weakly. Catherine, do you really want to go abroad? I can help you. I smiled bitterly. Why do you think I will accept your charity? The early autumn breeze blew by, and the air was still as hot as that night when the cicadas were chirping. I will find a way on my own. I let him go and said distantly, Winfield, I beg you, please don't annoy me again. 17. Winfield should be chasing Samantha. He is really a very awkward person, always eager to seize everything, but often unable to get what he wants. As far as I know, shortly after his mother left, she met someone again, got married and had children. But Winfield was left in a cold home without any love, always living in the shadow of his stepmother and younger brother. Don't break free. I sometimes feel sympathy for him, but it is limited to sympathy. I started working in a planned way. I had thought before about whether I should seize the time and graduate as soon as possible, but without funds after graduation, I still couldn't do it. If you want to make money, investment is of course the fastest way, but the upfront cost is too high. I found my previous auction house, and after passing the interview, I provided detailed explanation services to customers during holidays and weekends. Next to the auction house, there is a bar street with a quiet atmosphere. Some charity auctions will be held after a cocktail party in the evening. I was dragged to a rescue. When I came out, I saw Winfield dragging Samantha and making a quarrel on the street. In late autumn, Samantha was actually wearing a very short skirt that covered her hips. Her arms were bare, and her high chest was full of wine. I couldn't hear clearly what they were arguing about, but I just thought that the arrogant boy in the back wearing earrings and smoking looked familiar. It wasn't until he smiled and two deep dimples appeared at the corners of his mouth that I recognized it was Stefan. He has changed too much. He has been eaten away by cigarettes and alcohol all year round, and his appearance is a bit wretched. The quarrel was soon decided. Samantha pushed Winfield to the ground and yelled at him, "You sick boy! If you really care about me, why don't you come to my school? My dad never cared about me, you're an old man." Several. After saying that, he held hands with Stefan and left. Winfield sat on the ground, looking miserable, like an abandoned dog. I wanted to take a detour to leave, but he suddenly spoke and called me from a distance. "Catherine, are you satisfied? Doesn't it make you happy to see me like this?" I turned around and saw that his previously stubborn and proud eyes were filled with tears, reflecting the extravagant lights of the bar. "You don't want me. Samantha doesn't want me either." He gradually gasped and cried hoarsely, revealing immense pain and despair. "What on earth do you think I am? All of you. What on earth do you think I am?" There was a hint of bitterness in my heart, and I sighed, unable to answer. 18. Samantha went to the United States anyway. She missed classes at school for a long time, and the counselor called her home, which made her father so angry that he fell seriously ill. Samantha was ordered to drop out of school and was locked up at home for a week. She cried and said that she didn't want to stay in the country in the first place. It was better for her to die than to live in a dormitory with a group of poor people who couldn't get into school. Her father was so troubled by her that he actually agreed. A plane takes Samantha to her dream paradise in Manhattan. Winfield heard that he was surprisingly not emotionally broken. After separating from Samantha, he finally devoted himself to career-wise. We have different majors, so we rarely meet. We only meet each other very rarely. In some elective business courses, there is occasional overlap. After he broke down and cried in front of me that time, he became much more restrained, as if he had broken free of something overnight and became even more taciturn. "Don't mention anything about us anymore." Not long after, I heard that his younger brother had been sent abroad to a first-class business school. Clayton, like Samantha, grew up pampered by adults, had lots of casual sex, and was always at the bottom of school. I guess my family spent a lot of money on this trip. Winfield then worked harder and harder. In the second half of her junior year, one night when summer just started, Samantha suddenly called and said angrily that her family hadn't sent her money for a long time, and no one answered her calls to her father. What was going on? "Then I have to ask you," I said with a straight face. "Dad never contacts me, don't you know?" "What nonsense. If you have money on hand, call me right away." Samantha hung up cursing. How could I give her my hard-earned money? After thinking for a while, I called the home phone. It rang for a long time before the servant answered. I asked a few questions and said hesitantly, "Miss, sir." "Sir, he is sick and has been in the hospital for a while, but he is still alive. Keep it a secret, don't let us tell you, you'd better come back and take a look." After hanging up the phone, I felt uneasy and called Dr. Sam again. The other side was very cheerful and told me directly. Stroke caused by high blood pressure, left the left side of the waist and legs numb and unable to move. I didn't recover from the illness last time. I have worked too hard in the past 2 years. I heard that I was on a business trip last month. A project that was about to be negotiated fell apart, and I fell ill due to too much stress, and I was taken to the hospital. I pursed my lips and remained silent. "Catherine, it has been difficult for him these past few years." Dr. Sam sighed. "I know you resent him in your heart, but he is still your father." "I understand," I whispered. "Thank you, Dr. Sam. I will go back to see him as soon as possible." I took the latest flight on Friday and arrived in the capital in the early morning. I stood outside the ward, looking in through the small square window on the door, and suddenly realized that my father was really old. He was lying on the hospital bed. His tall body in his memory became flat and shriveled. His forehead was covered with fine lines, his sideburns were gray, and his eyebrows were furrowed in worry in his sleep. If you look carefully, the shape of your eyebrows looks very similar to mine in the mirror. I turned around and walked to the corridor, sitting alone in a daze. It was getting dark, and intermittent coughing came from the ward. I pushed the door in, took a glass of warm water, helped him sit up, and put the cup in his hand. Dad gave me a complicated look. "Why don't you hire a caregiver to stay overnight?" I said calmly. Dad held the cup in frustration. "How can I have so much spare money?" Then, the only sound in the ward was the sound of him swallowing while drinking water. "It's better to hire one." After a while, I said calmly, "I will go back to Hangzhou to go through the formalities, graduate early, and come to run the company for you. When Samantha gets married, I will hand over the company to her." Dad, after drinking the water, he put the empty cup back on the table, his eyes dazed, and he didn't make a sound. "You're right, Dad." I called to him after a long time. "You gave birth to me and raised me. It's a great kindness. I will use these few years to pay it back." The corners of Dad's mouth moved, and then a stream of tears slid down his sunken and thin cheeks. I know he understood my subtext. After the company is handed over, the blood relationship between our father and daughter will be severed. 19. Written requests for early graduation go by quickly. I had already completed my credits when I was a junior in college, and this year I was just working on projects with a few senior students. The company had a huge gap. After returning to the capital, I held a meeting with the supervisors and then went home to take out a few oil paintings from my mother's collection and a small leaf red sandalwood screen as a dowry as collateral. Dad has always been reluctant to touch my mother's belongings, and he doesn't understand the market value of these antiques. I asked him, "If Mother were alive, what do you think she would do?" Dad was silent for a while and nodded with tears in his eyes. As soon as the loan came in, I immediately transferred it to the factory, and then continued non-stop participating in bidding and negotiating with several important raw material suppliers. The He family is one of them. Perhaps due to our long-term friendship, he is also the only company that is still willing to supply us even if the final payment has not been settled. I made a special trip to visit Winfield's father, Jasper. Winfield's stepmother was also at home. She enthusiastically asked me questions, and she was obviously very concerned about my father's current situation. She is nearly 50 years old and has well-maintained skin. She has fine and fair skin, with only a few inconspicuous wrinkles appearing at the corners of her eyes when she smiles. She is much smoother than my stepmother. "Catherine hasn't found a partner yet, has she?" "Mother," he asked diligently, looking at me with satisfaction. I wore contact lenses today, my short natural curly hair was carefully styled, my face was lightly made up, and I was wearing a smart professional suit. "No." I smiled and noticed the depth in Jasper's sharp eyes, indicating that he had something to say. The fragrance of tea lingers in the study. Jasper took the Celadone cup I handed him, lowered his head and took a sip before saying, "Your family has been having a hard time these past few years, I know that." I listened quietly. Your father and I have been old friends for many years. He has a high vision and a stubborn temper. From a poor boy on a construction site to a big boss with a net worth of over 100 million, he finally married the daughter of the Yin family. Along the way, I know how much of it is opportunity and how much of it is ability. He sighed, his eyes falling heavily on me. Catherine, you are most like your father. You are tolerant and ruthless. You can be merciless to yourself and others. It is this temperament in you that I admire. I tightened my fingers on my knees, looked him in the face and said, Uncle Jasper, if you have anything to say, you can speak directly. Jasper smiled and nodded. Okay, then I'll be honest, Catherine. I hope you can be the daughter-in-law of my He family. Clayton will return to China in a few months, and I plan to hand the company over to him. With help, we will definitely grow bigger and stronger together. I subconsciously refused. Uncle, don't be too busy making decisions now. Jasper waved his hand. I also know that Clayton is incompetent and has been making you laugh all this time. Let's wait until he comes back and the company stabilizes, then we can meet and talk. It's just, his aura erupted like a tiger ready to go. I believe you have seen my sincerity in the past few years, Catherine. My uncle is a businessman at heart and will not do loss-making business. Your family is here with me. I think you know the money you have accumulated, so you don't need me to remind you. The teacups collided lightly in the air, making a crisp sound. I pursed my lips, and under Jasper's irresistible gaze, I raised my head and drank the half-cold tea. Bitterness spreads on the tip of the tongue. 20. I had just stayed up a long night when Winfield came to my door. You want to marry Clayton? Anger surged on his gloomy face, like a jackal driven to the edge of a cliff. I'm annoyed. He rubbed the center of his brows and said, Your father's request is now blocking Samantha's family's neck. What can I do if I don't agree? You know Clayton is my thorn in the side. Winfield gritted his teeth and smiled fiercely. You just want to make me angry, right? You hate me, so you don't like me, and you want to step on my head with him. I stood up, picked up the document bag and threw it at him. Clatter, crash. A paper flew all over the floor. It was all the information I had worked hard to compile day and night these days. What qualifications do you have to make irresponsible remarks against me? My eyes were bloodshot. If you have the ability, go and drag your brother and your father down. Winfield's hands were trembling, and he stared at me dimly, breathing rapidly. After a while, he regained his composure and said seriously, Catherine, marry me. The old man wants to divide your family's shares. Clayton just listens to him and lets him take control of you, and everything will be over. I don't hold many shares. I suppressed my temper and sat down slumped. The company will be handed over to Samantha in the future. Even if I marry Clayton, nothing will change. This moment and that moment. Winfield's breathing also calmed down, and he picked up the A4 papers on the ground one by one, sorted them and placed them in front of me. Marry me, Catherine. I can sign an agreement with you in advance and don't take any shares of Samantha's family. I was a little surprised, looked up at his solemn expression and hesitated. Where is Samantha? As soon as she comes back, will we divorce? Winfield was stunned for a moment, then smiled bitterly, but for just a short moment, he lost all expression and said hoarsely, Of course, do you think I will cling to you? 21. We didn't hold a wedding. We just took our household registration book to the civil affairs office and we were legally married. Before notifying both parents, Winfield met with his father alone. Jasper may have learned that Samantha would be the largest shareholder of the Fong Group in the future, so he stopped threatening me with the remaining payment. But when Winfield and I visited again, we didn't even leave the study door. On the contrary, when my father found out, he got a little excited and asked Winfield repeatedly if he didn't like Samantha anymore. Winfield looked calm and told him, I'm married to Catherine, Dad. I stood in the hospital corridor, my back pressed against the wall, silent. Next, we were both very busy. I was busy dealing with government officials and promoting bidding matters, while he was busy entering his own company, contacting old shareholders, and fighting against his father. After receiving the first project, I went to various places to inspect the market. It just so happened that a senior overseas student brought news that their company had developed a new earthquake-resistant and refractory material, and they wanted to cooperate with a company in mainland China to to put it into actual production. I quickly flew to Berlin, learned more about it, and brought the samples back to let the factory's masters check the quality. "You can try it." After looking at it carefully, he said, "Jianyan, if it works, we can save a lot in cost." The marketing manager reminded, "But actually selling it depends on market acceptance." I rubbed my face tiredly and said, "Government projects cannot be used for the time being. Let's try it on small private projects first. We will give you a preferential price. There is no minimum threshold. We just see whether the final effect can meet the contract requirements." Everyone responded individually. I spent the rest of the time running around waiting for the final result. After we got married, our house was settled in a community between the two companies. It was a simple house with 3 bedrooms and 1 living room. Because of Winfield's illness, I deliberately chose a top floor with 1 staircase. From the garage to home, except for the elevator, I had almost no contact with outsiders. Cleaning is done once a week. If I have free time, I will clean it again during the week to try not to let dust accumulate. All the habits I had in my mother's room, I picked up again. The 3-piece set is constantly sterilized by high temperature, eliminating the need for scented skincare cosmetics and storing daily and emergency aerosols everywhere. Outside Winfield's room is connected to a balcony filled with green plants. They are all non-flowering plants with large and full leaves, like a dense jungle in midsummer. During this time, Winfield went out early and came back late. Several times he fell asleep when he came back. After I heard the noise, I got up hard, yawned and went to his room, urging him to wash up quickly and take a peak flow meter to test his body. Perhaps because of excessive stress, Winfield would often wake up sick while sleeping. Sometimes 2 doors apart, I can still hear him calling me Samantha and his mother's names randomly. At this time, his illness will become more serious, as if a hole was punched in his chest, forcing him to use his mouth and nose to catch the scattered air. I stood up helplessly, opened the door, took out the aerosol and blocked his open mouth. "Hold it and breathe through your nose." Winfield's cold hand tremblingly covered the back of my hand. His eyes were so broken that he was about to die. "It's okay," I whispered, reaching out and slowly stroking his back until his breathing calmed down again. Don't go." He pulled me, his tone begging. "Stay here. Stay with me." I looked at him quietly and after a moment removed his hand. Winfield is visibly about to collapse again. In the dim light, I sighed and compromised. "I'll get a pillow." After this, sleeping in the same bed occurred frequently. At first, Winfield obeyed the rules, but after a few times, without my permission, he stretched out his arms to hug me, buried his face in the side of my neck and took a deep breath. "What perfume did you use? It smells nice." I'm speechless. Even the air in this home has to be filtered 24 hours a day. How can I dare to use any perfume? Go to sleep. I was tired of tossing him, so I patted the back of his head with my backhand. "Stop teasing me. You're so careless." Just like this, half a year has passed, and Winfield has not had a single illness during the day, and his spirits have improved a lot. Our new product has finally been put on the market. After being marketed on multiple platforms, it has become famous in the building materials circle. By the time competing companies react and want to keep up, we have already eaten the biggest piece of the cake. The group turned the corner, and at the same time, Dad's condition was gradually under control. The only one who was worried was Samantha, 22. The promotion of the new material was successful, and Winfield and I soon moved to a new villa in the west of the city. Winfield has been running around on the front lines during this period, implementing several expansion plans that the company has been shelving, and relying on the momentum of the Fong Group, he has won unanimous support from old shareholders. I provided him with some funds one after another, and asked him to acquire the shares held by retail investors. The final total added up to 1% more than Jasper Clayton and his son. When Winfield actually took the top position, it had been 2 years since we got married. In the past 2 years, we have always treated each other with respect, more like colleagues or comrades than husband and wife or friends. They know each other's roots and have a bit of warmth about moving forward side by side. But whenever I want to enjoy life calmly, I am always annoyed by reminder calls from overseas. Samantha has become more and more aggressive in the past few years. She calls me every 10.5 months to ask for money, and the amount becomes bigger every time. I was worried about my father's condition and tried not to say anything many times, but this time she asked for 30 million. You have a house and a car over there. Why do you need so much money? I yelled into the phone. I won't call you even a penny. If your graduation is postponed again this year, you will be waiting for the northwest wind. Samantha cursed for a long time in English, then switched to Chinese and shouted, Catherine, what you are using is not the family's money. Dad said that what is at home is mine. Why don't you give me my money? I was immediately made angry and laughed. Okay, if you want money, you can give me this year's school results, and then go to the community to issue a certificate of no history of drug abuse. If you can't do any of them, you won't get a single point. Okay, be cruel. Samantha also sneered. If you don't give it, I will go to my grandpa and 2 uncles to get it, as long as you don't feel embarrassed. My breath suffocated, knowing that she had stabbed a knife into my fatal spot. Proof of no history of smoking contraband, at least this is a must. I clutched my phone hard and said, Samantha, if you still don't want to, just go and embarrass yourself. It's better than raising an addict anyway. Samantha clicked her tongue irritably and agreed. The mail came quickly. I had it appraised by a professional agency and found no problems, so I gave her a living allowance according to the previous standards. Samantha sent countless cursing messages mixed with English. Another year later, the new company jointly founded by Fong and he was successfully listed, and Winfield, as an upstart in the industry, appeared on the front page of Domestic Economic Weekly. That night, Winfield took out his collection of red wine and wanted to clink glasses with me. You can't drink, I stopped him funny. Okay, I know you're happy, I'll have a drink, and you can have juice instead. On the terrace, the light strips carefully arranged by the servants make the atmosphere particularly charming. I drank a glass of red wine and was immediately overwhelmed by the smell of the century-old wine. Catherine. Winfield came over and said softly, his eyes lingering on my lips moistened by wine. I stared in confusion, seeing a familiar face slowly approaching, but I couldn't get over my guard. Just as the warm breath hit my face, the phone on the table suddenly rang. I heard Winfield's tut, and then Samantha's cheerful laughter came from the phone. Congratulations, Clayton. I saw the cover of the magazine. I will definitely go back to China to congratulate you at your company's celebration party next week. His consciousness suddenly returned. I pressed my painful forehead, and when my vision finally became clear, I saw Winfield's bewildered expression. 23. Over the next few days, Winfield and I tacitly refrained from mentioning the matter. The celebration banquet was held after the listing ceremony. In addition to all employees of the new company and the backbone of Fong and he, there were also representatives of important partners. Dad and Jasper sat side by side at the head table. I held the wine glass and walked among the people. I didn't see Winfield coming over for a long time. I frowned and glanced at the secretary. The secretary was a little embarrassed. Mr. Fong, Winfield said that the plane will be delayed, so I asked you to entertain him first. He will be back as soon as he receives the person. No wonder he disappeared right after the ceremony. Tell him to take it easy, I said calmly. It doesn't matter if you take your time and reminisce about the past. After saying that, he showed a businesslike smile and took the hand of a boss's wife to chat enthusiastically. Halfway through the banquet, Winfield finally arrived late. Also arriving at the same time as him was Samantha, who was elegant and beautiful in a custom-made dress. After not seeing each other for a few years, she had lost a lot of weight. Her body curves were close to those of a supermodel, and her skin was tanned to the wheat color admired by Europeans and Americans. She held Winfield's arm affectionately along the way, smiled sideways from time to time, and greeted every stranger she passed cheerfully. Dad stood up immediately and called her happily, Samantha. Only then did Samantha let go of Winfield, trotted over and hugged him. Dad, I miss you so much. After saying that, she pressed a big kiss on his face like a child. You look like you've grown up a lot, Jasper said with a smile. Why do you still look like a child? Uncle Jasper. Samantha also hugged him warmly, her smile extremely pure and sincere. People around looked at me and Samantha curiously. Only then did the father say, My little daughter has just returned from studying in the United States. She is young and ignorant and makes everyone laugh. Everyone expressed their understanding. Dad took Samantha around the venue, allowing her to get to know many uncles who had been working with her for a long time. Samantha was at home in this kind of situation. A few witticisms could cheer up the atmosphere and won the unanimous favor of the elders. Gradually, some young people began to gather around her and listen to her vividly talk about her experiences on Wall Street in New York, the strip clubs in Manhattan, and the beaches under the clear blue sun in Mexico. After she appeared, I was automatically reduced to the background. After a brief exchange of words with the secretary, he put down his wine glass and walked to the semi-curved balcony outside the venue, overlooking the night view of the entire city. Not far away, Winfield chased me for a few steps, but was quickly stopped by my father, who asked him to get on the stage and cut the cake together. Under the flashing spotlight, he and Samantha held the handle of the knife together, like a newlywed couple attending a wedding, raising their hands and swiping lightly under the many blessings and laughter. The surface of the perfect cake suddenly collapsed, revealing a deep, flat crack. The night wind blew across my face. I closed my eyes and felt a lightness in my body, as if my soul was floating freely with the gentle breeze. Time to go. Finally. It's the time I've been looking forward to the most. 24. That night I went back very early. After washing up, I started sorting out the plans I had accumulated over the years. Before planning the antique store, I planned to take a long vacation for myself and travel around the world. I've been traveling all over the country for business trips, and I've been to Germany quite a few times, so I put it all aside for the time being. I circled a few places on the map, marked them 1, 2, and 3, planned the route, and asked the agent to sell my car and real estate in China. I want to hide my departure from the company first. Anyway, everything is on track now, and my father is in good health, so he should be able to help Winfield manage it. As for the property that Winfield and I jointly hold, such as this villa, we will divide it directly after the divorce procedures are completed. I have shares in 2 companies, overseas accounts that I can start using after I appear on the scene, and antiques that I have invested in over the years. After calculating, Winfield's figure suddenly appeared in the corner of his eye. He looked hesitant, as if he was trying hard to express something. I frowned in confusion and took off my headphones. It has been sent back. She and I really have nothing to do. Winfield noticed my movements, pursed his lips, and paused. What? My mind was still filled with messy numbers, so I asked stupidly, "What are you looking at?" Winfield lowered his voice and glanced at my tablet page. "Do some math." I was in a good mood and ignored his unusual expression. I waved my hand and said, "You smell like alcohol. Go and wash yourself off." Winfield stood still and didn't move. His illness did not allow alcohol to come near him, so it was self-evident where he got this smell. And here? I pointed at my collar and laughed at him. I'd better pay more attention in the future and let the employee see what it looks like. The sound of footsteps came, and before I could finish speaking, Winfield grabbed my wrist fiercely. "Is your heart really made of ice, Catherine?" he said with a distorted face and gritted his teeth. "After all these years, you haven't treated me at all." The bright red lip print was still hanging on his opened collar. I stared blankly into Winfield's painfully struggling eyes and asked, "Nothing." Winfield could say no more. "I won't let you go." Finally, he let go of my hand and said firmly, "Catherine, please give up." I should have realized Winfield was crazy. That night, while I was sleeping, they blocked the door to the room from the outside and took away all my mobile phones, tablets, and computers. "What's wrong with you?" I yelled angrily. "Open it for me, bastard. You are illegally detaining me." Through a door, Winfield's muffled voice came over. "You can't leave, Catherine. I have torn up the divorce agreement in the study. How long ago did you sign it?" Before I could say anything, he immediately said, "Forget it, I don't want to hear it. Think about it carefully, and I will let you out when you calm down." The footsteps are getting farther and farther. I picked up the desk lamp and threw it hard on the spot where Winfield had been standing just now. 25. After being locked in a room for a day and a night, I once again understood why I wanted to escape from this environment so much. All the men around me want me to be an obedient beast. They didn't care how heavy or cold the chain around my neck was, as long as the other end of the chain can be firmly held in your hand. I dug out all the sheets and clothes in the house, tied them end to end into a tight knot, forming a long rope, and then used this rope to slide down from the balcony on the second floor. Winfield changed all the bodyguards and servants, so I could only escape through the garden and through the back door. When we got to the first floor, through the side when he opened the door, he saw Samantha standing in the living room, saying something urgently to Winfield. Winfield looked cold, raised his hand to stop her words, and asked the servant to see the guest off. At this moment, I rushed to the front hall and stopped Winfield in front of her. "Wait a minute." Samantha turned back in confusion, her eyes flickering back and forth between the panting me and the sullen Winfield. "I'll go back with you." I stepped forward and grabbed her and left. Winfield smashed the cup in his hand with a bang and shouted angrily, "Catherine!" With a dark look on my face, I looked back at him with hatred. The steps never stopped. After getting in the car, Samantha asked excitedly, "Are you going to get a divorce?" "Yes." I leaned on the back seat tiredly and closed my eyes to rest. "Because you are back." "I'm just saying, how come Clayton is with you? You guys haven't dealt with him since you were a child." Samantha said excitedly and longingly, "I know he must still love me, but he's just a little angry with me." I was half asleep and didn't hear what she was talking about. Back to the home where Samantha and I were born. I briefly told my father about the divorce and told him that I was leaving. Dad was silent for a long time. It wasn't until the coffee in front of us gradually became cold that he said indifferently, "Since you are leaving, don't come back again." Chuckle. "Are you still afraid that I will disturb their family's life again? Then goodbye, Dad." I stood up and opened the door to the study. "I hope this is the last time we see each other, and I wish you a long life." A week later, the announcement of my resignation was released, and I officially stepped down from the top position of the company. After sending another signed divorce agreement to Winfield, I booked a flight and watched a movie comfortably while lying on the hotel bed. Winfield's call came as expected. I hung up repeatedly, but he continued to call tirelessly. I thought, forget it, can you still eat me? Cancel the flight. After being connected, Winfield's first sentence was an order. "I told you you can't leave, Catherine. Don't force me to do anything. Why are you so stubborn?" I said to him patiently, "We had agreed upon the divorce when Samantha came back. Even if you still blame her for abandoning you at that time, don't use me to test your relationship." As soon as he finished speaking, the servant's hesitant voice came from the background. "Sir, Miss Fong is already waiting outside the door. Look." I decisively cut off the call, secretly cursing that these two are crazy. 26. But I never dreamed that Winfield would be so nerve-wracking, that he would let the finance department do something to restrict my appearance on the grounds of embezzling the company's finances. All my assets in the country were frozen overnight, and until I could prove my innocence, all I had left was a few $1,000s in cash. Fortunately, I had a similar experience and I quickly regained my composure, called a lawyer, and asked him to help me collect evidence and appeal as soon as possible. The lawyer has been friends with me for many years. After agreeing, he asked, "Catherine, what's going on between you and Winfield? The news that he took Samantha to the charity gala last night went viral. Are you really going to divorce?" "It's not like that. Isn't it so ugly?" I looked through the news on various platforms. Financial weeklies were predicting the stock turmoil of the new company, and the gossip media revealed that Winfield's Bai Yueguang had always been the second daughter of Samantha's family, and marrying me was just a temporary measure to make a comeback, etc. The accompanying pictures used the photos of Winfield holding Samantha's hand and cutting the cake at the celebration party, as well as the photo of them looking at each other last night. I glanced at her casually and tried to deal with it by saying there was a disagreement, but I just told her to do it as soon as possible. As soon as the phone was hung up, Samantha came to me like a ghost. "Catherine, what tricks did you do? Why can't the money in my name be used?" I didn't know anything about it, but I quickly guessed that maybe my father had taken special precautions because of her lavish spending in recent years. "Don't ask me," I sneered. "I'm not interested in your money." "Liar. Shameless thief." She yelled in English. "The company, Dad, and Winfield are all mine. You can never take it away. You damn bitch." "You are a vulgar shrew now, Samantha." I lowered my face. "If you want to pretend, just pretend to be a little bit fake and keep pretending to the end. Don't let your skin be peeled off one day. And let people see the pickled things inside and it will be disgusting." After saying that, he hung up the phone without waiting for her to scold him. There was no news from my lawyer friend for several days. There was too little money to spend, and because of the news, old acquaintances in the circle stayed far away. Winfield never contacted me again after that day. It was like looking coldly at the rat hitting the wall everywhere in the cage. He had to force me to bow my head and force me to take the initiative to say to him, "I was wrong and I won't dare to do it again," before I would give up. Dream. I cheered up and contacted my senior in Berlin and asked her to help me find a reliable foreign lawyer. After hearing my story, my senior sister gave me a password and an address while cursing, and asked me to stay at her home for a few days before going abroad. When the lawyer arrived, she would meet me at her home. I breathed a sigh of relief, unsubscribed, and took a taxi downstairs. A taxi happened to be parked there. The location of the house was a bit remote. Not long after the taxi left the Circle line, I noticed that the driver's back looked familiar. It wasn't until he looked up at me in the rearview mirror that I recognized it was Stefan. "Long time no see, miss." He said hello to me teasingly, looking like a social youth. I nodded politely. "Hello." He looked down at his phone while the light was red and said, "Listen to some music? We still have a long way to go, why don't you take a nap first?" The soft piano sound gradually began, and a strange smell blew from the air outlet. My eyelids were heavy, and as soon as I realized something was strange, my head tilted and I fainted. 27. When I woke up, I was tied up in an abandoned factory floor. Samantha was wearing my long trench coat and a short haircut similar to mine. She scolded Stefan irritably. "Okay, didn't I help you act? So easy to recognize. I'll answer their phone calls. Just leave it alone." After that, he came over and took off the tape on my mouth and asked sternly, "You think I'm easy to find, sister? Where's the money? Don't be pretentious. I know you still have accounts overseas." "Samantha, why on earth are you?" I was still in a state of confusion due to the lingering effects of the drug, and I said blankly, "You obviously have everything, why are you still not satisfied?" "I need money. A lot of money." Samantha grabbed me by the collar, her eyes red. "I got into trouble. I owed a lot of debt in Las Vegas. They wanted to let me back. I raised money. You couldn't even pay back the interest." She couldn't stop crying as she spoke and begged, "Sister, I was forced to take a lot of videos. Dad will be furious if he sees it. Just take pity on Dad and pity me. As long as this hurdle is passed, both Winfield and the company belong to you, and I will listen to you, okay? How much?" I felt chills all over my body and said with trembling lips, "Your living expenses alone are $100,000 a year." "Samantha, are you crazy?" Samantha's face suddenly turned red. She stood up suddenly and kicked me to the ground. She jumped and said, "It's not your fault, bitch. I asked you to pay me $30 million back then, but you didn't pay me. Now the interest has piled up. You're scolding me again." My head hit the ground, a large pool of blood oozed out, and my eyes kept turning black. "Why? Don't you ask Winfield for it?" I said weakly, trying to gather my strength. "My money has been frozen because of him. He loves you so much, why wouldn't he help you?" Samantha's expression was stunned, as if she was greatly shaken. Unexpectedly, Stefan suddenly interrupted. "Don't be offended by her. This woman is very tricking and wants to expose you." My heart suddenly sank, and I glanced at Stefan warily, thinking that this kid was much more difficult to deal with than Samantha. Samantha kicked me a few more times in anger, started biting her nails nervously, and walked around in circles. "What should I do? What should I do? The day is almost here, what should I do?" Stefan tilted his head and looked at me with interest and ill intentions. Said, "How much money can your sister make if she takes a video? She is so famous now and has a high net worth. As long as we have the video, we can ask her for money any way we want." Samantha's eyes suddenly lit up. 28. I suppressed the shudder and watched them looking around for positions and setting up their mobile phones. 1, 2, 3, 3 cameras, shooting from multiple angles. Samantha smiled at me like a devil and used my fingers to unlock the phone, but she suddenly panicked after just one glance at the page. "Clayton called me a lot. What should I do? How did he know you left the city?" Stefan's expression also changed, and he came over and said, The GPS was turned off after she fell into coma. There is no way Winfield knows our specific location. He will check it out. The surveillance at the hotel entrance can catch her getting into your car." Just as he was talking, Winfield called again. Samantha went completely crazy. She threw her cell phone reflexively and squatted on the ground with her head in her hands, shivering. "What should I do? What should I do? Clayton will hate me. If he finds out, I will never be able to stand up again." I was temporarily relieved and was about to strike while the iron was hot to make Samantha repent in time and let me go, but Stefan suddenly slapped her in the face and cursed, "Stop fucking crying. I have been dragged into the water by you. He can spare you, you won't let me go." He came over and taped my mouth again, smoked a cigarette, thought for a while and said, "Just ask Winfield for money. Pretend that Catherine kidnapped you, and ask him to send money to your friends in the United States." Samantha's eyes widened. How could he believe it? "Acting. Aren't you good at acting?" Stefan said impatiently. "You could fool your dad and the others when you were young, why can't you do it now? Quick." "I'll shut her mouth." Stefan wrapped tape around my face. He was afraid that I would make any sound, so he didn't even leave a breathing hole. I lay on the ground suffocating. The bleeding from the fresh wound on my head had not stopped, and my body gradually became numb and cold as the blood drained away. Samantha bit her nails and hesitated for a moment, ruffling her hair irritably, then walked to a rusty machine tool and sat down. Kneeling on her legs and behind her hands, she motioned for Stefan to use my phone to make a video call to Winfield. The right side of her face was still red and swollen from the slap she had just received, and her eyes showed a look of fear when she closed and opened them, with tears in the corners of her eyes. Stefan made an awesome mouth gesture and gave her a thumbs up. The video was connected, and Winfield's violent roar came from the mobile phone. "Catherine, where the hell did you go?" When he saw Samantha kneeling on the ground, his voice suddenly stopped. "Clayton, Clayton." Samantha burst into tears and called him loudly. "Help me. My sister kidnapped me. She said she hates you and wants to kill me to vent her anger." Winfield remained silent for a long time. Samantha knocked her head to the ground again and again, crying in fear. "I don't dare anymore, I don't dare anymore, sister. Stop hitting me. It hurts me so much. It really hurts, woo-woo." My consciousness gradually faded, and I tried my best to make a muffled sound from my throat, hoping to attract Winfield's attention. Unexpectedly, there was silence for a long time, and it turned out that Winfield was stimulated and fell ill. He was breathing rapidly, and the bellows-like hissing sound came through the mobile phone, mixed with intermittent painful murmurs. "Catherine, don't hurt her. I let you go. I let you go." The heart was shot with holes one after another by bullets. I lowered my head slumped, tears falling from the corners of my eyes, past the tape that tightened my cheeks, past my mouth and nose where I couldn't breathe, and fell heavily to the dusty ground. There was a needle-like pain in my lungs. The air was gradually withdrawn from the body. I suddenly realized that I was going to die. Like Mom, this is also my destined ending. 29. Before my soul left my body, my eyes were like cameras operating autonomously without any control. After the video was hung up, Samantha was captured looking excited after receiving the transfer. Photographed them, they quarreled over the division of the spoils, and when they saw me dying, their expressions of shock turned pale. Stefan suggested dismembering the body, but Samantha looked pale and murmured that there was a way that would work. They carried me out of the workshop, found a flower bed with soft soil, removed old iron pieces, dug a deep pit, and threw me in. Layers of soil were thrown from top to bottom, slowly covering my feet, my legs, my waist, and my shoulders. My face. The vision was dark. As my skin pressed against the moist and smelly soil, I seemed to smell the smell of the grave when my mother was buried. But unexpectedly, death came so naturally and calmly, even catching me off guard. When my soul rose into the sky, I saw Samantha on the ground clumsily jumping into the shallow pit covering my body, and lying down pretending to be parallel to my body. Stefan buried her with the remaining soil, leaving only a breathing hole. After cleaning up, he called 110 with my mobile phone. The police car arrived quickly, followed by a stumbling Winfield and a screaming ambulance. Regardless of the left and right, he dug Samantha out of the soil with his bare hands, and with his eyes red, He hugged her tightly into his arms in fear. A group of people came in a hurry and left in a hurry. Only the shallow pit was left. And under the pit, my dead body was curled up. After that, there was another rain and a gentle breeze. Fill the shallow pit with greenery. 30. It's a miracle I didn't turn into a ghost. When I first followed Winfield, I tried many ways, including choking him with my translucent hands, or trying to move the object and hit Samantha on the head. But without exception, it didn't work. After rescuing Samantha that day, Winfield quickly signed the divorce agreement. But not long after, people went crazy looking for me everywhere. I stood quietly behind him, watching him drop all his work, like a paranoid bent on revenge, scolding me, cursing me, shouting at me in his sleep to wake me up, and then murmuring to call me best after waking up. Don't let him find you. I hate you too, Catherine. I just want to drag you to death with me. You actually want to leave so much, want to leave me so much. You are so cruel. He lost a lot of weight, was unshaven every day, had anorexia, had insomnia, and fell ill from time to time. In the end, Clayton's comeback made him suddenly wake up and regain his fighting spirit. Samantha used the money he gave her to pay off her gambling debt. Such a huge sum was spent in less than half a minute. I stood in the living room and watched her politely greeting Winfield, crying and using the so-called psychological shadow to ask for his attention. On the surface, they looked like beasts snuggling together and licking each other's wounds. Later, due to the business situation, the wedding was quickly held with the joint efforts of the two elderly people to persuade them. The wedding was a big one, held in the same church that Mom and Dad had used. Samantha wore an expensive custom-made wedding dress, smiled brightly, and exchanged diamond rings the size of pigeon eggs with Winfield. I stood not far from them, watching the happy smile on my father's face, listening to the applause of blessings from the guests, and watching Samantha take the initiative to come forward, hug Winfield and kiss her like no one else. The light of stained glass hits the angel's white wings. I looked up at the Lord hanging on the wall, suffering for everyone. I thought to myself, when will my suffering end? 31. Fortunately, it's almost there. Today, 10 years later, I can finally face everything calmly. It's normal for Winfield to be excited and think of me. Anyway, it won't be long before the fate line will return to its original state. Before get off work, Winfield returned home repeatedly due to illness. I followed him and saw him going up to the second floor after a long time. The dusty room was opened after many years. I sat boredly waiting at the door and heard his intermittent crying. Alas, as you get older, you will always be a little emotional. But this is also a good thing. It means that he is convincing himself little by little that he has forgotten me. Winfield is sleeping on my bed like this. I was impatient to wait and wanted to go in and kick him awake so that he would stop dirtying my place. I was irritated when I heard a quarrel coming from downstairs. The structure of ghosts is different from that of humans, and any sound can be captured through air vibrations. While Winfield was asleep and the line of fate was at its thinnest and longest, I decisively went out to watch the fun. Samantha's face was dark, and she asked if Winfield, the servant who had just taken the shift, was back. Behind her was a familiar-looking old woman with gray hair and tattered clothes. After getting a negative answer, Samantha relaxed a little and asked the old woman to follow her to the living room. Under the bright light, I suddenly recognized her identity: Matilda, the nanny who had lied to me. I had a premonition of what they were going to say, so I hurried into the room and tried to wake Winfield from his sleep. His whole body was buried in the quilt, and there were tears on his haggard face. I couldn't touch it, couldn't wake it up, and was so anxious that I felt like sweating. But God seemed to finally help me. A sudden gust of evening wind blew over the photo frame with my mother's photo that was standing on the table. The picture frame fell on the carpet with a splat sound. The sound was neither loud nor quiet, just enough to wake up Winfield from his light sleep. At the same time, the sounds of Samantha and Matilda talking were heard downstairs. "Samantha, just because I have taken care of you, help him. He went in because of you," the old woman begged in panic. Over the years, the amount of money he gambled has been getting bigger and bigger. I couldn't stop him no matter what. He just ended up hurting himself. "It's none of my business," Samantha said impatiently. "Why do you mean it's because of me? You don't know who he is because of me? Don't wrongly accuse a good person for no reason." "Samantha, you can't say that," the old woman yelled. If you hadn't let him go abroad to avoid the limelight, how could he have been led astray by those people outside? Before that, the neighbors praised him as the most filial child. He has changed a lot since he came back. Ouch, my poor Ausha. Stop howling. Samantha's voice was sharp. Don't you just want to extort money? In the past few years, all I have given you and him has been at least 3 to 4 million. Why, you really think that I am you're being taken advantage of, right? I'm telling you, there's no way around it. The old woman's crying gradually became quieter. After a moment, he let out a vague sneer. Second, miss, don't speak so harshly. What is blackmail? It's called blackmail when bad people defraud good people out of money. My old lady thinks she's not a good person, so you've done a lot of bad things. Why do you have to do it one more time? Can I tell you the details? Samantha's breath was unstable. Shut up. The old woman's voice became louder. Oh, who killed his mother and put the blame on his own sister? Samantha screamed. Shut up. Shut up. But the old woman didn't spare her. Oh, if my son doesn't tell me, I still don't know if you have killed your own sister too. Winfield staggered as he stood on the stairs. Ouch, ouch, I heard it was to pay off a debt. You gambler, you still said you weren't the one who led my precious son away. The old woman cursed readily. If you, a 1,000-horse rider, hadn't seduced Junzi, would he have left home and gone to the United States? So what if you gave him 10 million? He would have lost all that money, and not even a cent would be left. My old lady, he also took away the coffin and paid for it completely. I don't ask you for money, but who wants to go? As she said that, she seemed to have discovered something. Ah, this child looks exactly like Junzi when he was a child. Is he my good grandson? I asked you why you have been hiding him from me, but you think of me as a grandma. I'm so hurt. I'll take a photo of this. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Samantha jumped up like an agitated hen and stretched out her claws to scratch her face. The two soon got into a scuffle, overturning tables, chairs, and sofas. The child's photo frame broke and shattered glass all over the floor. Winfield bent over, gasping for breath, and grabbed a piece of paper on the wall with his fingertips. There were bloodstains on his body, and his joints were white and blue through the thin skin. The aerosol was clearly in his pocket, but he forgot to pick it up. As soon as he recovered a little, he stumbled downstairs, pulled the two people who were stunned at the same time apart, and held Samantha tightly. Is what she said true? His eyes were blood red, like a ghost about to open his mouth and bite out human flesh. Where is Catherine? Is she dead? 32. Yes, you finally found it. I stood in the mess, laughed with relief, and felt extremely relaxed. The wind blew in the garden, and I suddenly wanted to go out for a walk like that day. You heard it all, what else can I say? Samantha was pinched by Winfield. Big tears fell from her eyes, and her hands drew blood on the broken glass. So, are you going to kill me to avenge her? She trembled with trembling lips, crying more and more fiercely, and finally yelled, Winfield, tell me the truth, have you never truly loved me for a day? You damn, have you always regarded me as Catherine's substitute? Winfield was stunned for a moment, and after a moment, he trembled his lips and said, Yes, I have lied to myself for too long. What I always wanted was the girl in a white dress who would understand me and talk to me with a smile. But I can't find it anywhere. Samantha cried so hard that she pushed him away, picked up the debris on the ground and threw them at him one by one. Asshole! Liar! You are not a man. You are not a human being. Yes, I'm not a human being. Winfield looked crazy, murmuring and letting go of her. His eyes looked in the direction where I was standing, but his pupils were empty. I'm not a human being. How could I do that to her? Winfield smiled and cried again, as if he was crazy or stupid. After 3 years of marriage, I still can't warm her heart. I still feel that I have been wronged. The last look she gave me was filled with hatred. Catherine is dead. Catherine, she. After saying the last sentence, he fell to the ground, his whole body twitching. His lips were blood red and purple, and he could no longer make a sound. In the middle of the night, the respiratory department of the hospital was crowded with people. Dr. Sam's hair was gray. He pinched his eyebrows sleepily and said in a deep voice, The situation is not optimistic. He is cyanotic and his blood oxygenation is low, which has led to coma. He needs to be hospitalized for observation for a period of time. Why is it so serious? Dad was very worried and asked Samantha, "Are you losing your temper again? I told you that he is a patient and cannot be stimulated. Why do you always—" Ugh. Samantha's face turned pale and she didn't respond to anything he said. "Forget it. Dad couldn't bear it anymore. You should take good care of him these days. Pay attention to the numbers on the instrument, as Dr. Sam said." But Samantha suddenly grabbed him tightly and choked with sobs. "Dad, I want to go home. Take me home." The father's face showed distress, and he hurriedly hugged her and coaxed, Okay, my good daughter has been wronged too. Don't worry, Dad is here." I turned around and drifted back to the ward, and saw the little boy sitting honestly on the small bench, looking at the values on the instrument screen without blinking. He looked very similar to Stefan when I first met him. Winfield was unconscious, and his fingertips were still trembling, as if something in his dream was making him extremely uneasy. Another week later, Winfield woke up and was discharged from the hospital despite Dr. Sam's dissuasion. Then I immediately went to see Stefan in prison. 10 years have passed, and he has become even more ugly and vulgar. His already thin body has been repeatedly overstretched, and it has become almost broken. When he saw Winfield, he gave a dull smile, revealing a mouthful of incomplete yellow teeth. "Hey, father of the sponsor, you finally found him?" With a sickly pale face, Winfield got straight to the point. "Tell me exactly what happened back then." "Pay me," Stefan said with a smile. "You also know that my life is not worth anything." Winfield slapped a check without blinking. Stefan then told Winfield in detail what happened when Samantha kidnapped me for gambling debts, acted in a show to trick him, and then buried me alive with Stefan. "Oh, now that I think about it, that was a really good idea. I don't know how she came up with this stupid idea." Stefan clicked his tongue with relish. Winfield's back spasmed, and he took out the emergency Ventolin from his pocket with trembling hands. Before the lid was opened, his fingers loosened and fell to the ground. "Hide and seek." He spoke in a breathy voice, shrugging his shoulders and laughing masochistically. "Haha. It turns out, she told me a long time ago." The tears fell on the back of the hand as if they were broken. 33. When my body was exhumed, only a set of bones remained. No matter how much mental preparation I made, my soul still trembled violently when I saw this scene. Winfield knelt on the edge of the pit, his fingertips bleeding and his whole body covered in mud. "Boss!" The workers on the side couldn't bear to see it and wanted to help him, but they saw him falling straight in, hugging my bones, burying his face in the wet soil, and made no sound for a long time. People around him looked disgusted. Even I feel a little sick. Winfield didn't care, just like when he held me in his arms on the bed. He sniffed the curved neck bone with the tip of his nose, his movements very gentle. For a long time, the workers couldn't stand it anymore and urged him, "Boss, if you don't do it, it will be dark." Only then did Winfield get up, dig out the bones one by one with his own hands, and place them one by one in order in the crystal coffin he brought. At Samantha's house, her father has been discharged from the hospital and is walking in the garden with his nanny. The motorcade stopped at the gate. Several workers lifted the crystal coffin containing my bones and followed Winfield into the garden. Dad was startled and asked, "Winfield, what are you going to do?" "Tell Samantha to come out," Winfield said with a dull face. "Dad, please take a look, I brought Catherine back." The old man didn't know why at first, but when he saw the bones, his eyes immediately turned black and he fell backwards. The nanny also yelled, "Ah!" dropped the wheelchair in her hand and ran away like a ghost. Winfield calmly asked his father to be carried into the living room, asked the servant to call Dr. Sam, and then went directly to the room to look for Samantha. I followed him around this extremely familiar house. The first floor has the dining room, guest bedroom, and maid's room, while the second floor is the master bedroom, my mother's room, and the nursery where Samantha and I lived together when we were young. This is the room that our parents carefully decorated before we were born. They devoted their endless precious efforts when they first became parents. And many years later, those pairs of wooden horses, cradle, handmade dolls, all disappeared. All that's left is an empty box without any trace of emotion. Samantha is hiding in this little box right now. She found out from nowhere the baby quilts and small blankets we had used, and stacked them on top of each other to form a messy and strange nest. As an adult, she hugged her favorite stuffed toy when she was 7 years old and hid fearfully in the nest where she felt the most secure. Winfield pushed the door open and walked in. She instantly showed a frightened expression and screamed, "I didn't kill her. It wasn't me. It wasn't me." Winfield dragged her out directly. The crystal coffin is placed majestically in the living room. The unconscious father was lying on the sofa. Winfield pressed Samantha's neck, forcing her to kneel down in front of the coffin, and ordered her indifferently, "Kowtow, aren't you very good at kowtow? Just do what you saw in the video that day, cry and kowtow." 34. "I don't want. I won't knock." Samantha cried and struggled, shouting, "Dad! Dad, wake up and help me. By the way, there is still something missing." Winfield murmured, took off the tie and tied Samantha's ankles, then cut her arms behind her back and tied them with belts. "It's okay now." Winfield called the cameraman in the car and asked the camera to shoot her from the side. He motioned for the bodyguard to come forward. "Press her down until she gets 100 hits." Samantha cried at first, then scolded her. When she stopped scolding, she cried again. At the 67th hour, she tremblingly confessed, "I didn't mean to, sister. I just wanted Topi some money." "Woo-woo. Dad, Mum, Samantha really doesn't want to harm you." At the 80th time, Dr. Sam hurried over and didn't dare to say anything when he saw the fight. He hurriedly gave Dad medicine and checked. At the 92nd time, my father woke up leisurely, opened his eyes and saw the huge crystal coffin in front of him, and his daughter who was kneeling in front of the coffin, crying and kowtowing. "Samantha!" His eyes bulged and he almost fell ill again. He fell on the back of the sofa and couldn't help but gasp. "Are you crazy? How could you do this to Samantha?" Winfield's eyes were blank. He took out his mobile phone and logged into the cloud disk of My Life, clicked on the video that had been stored for many years, and threw it to him. It was an early piece of amusement park surveillance, showing 2 children holding hands, talking and laughing as they passed a clown selling fake flowers. The girl smiled heartily, muttered something to the boy, ran to the clown and asked for a bouquet of yellow fake flowers, and the middle-aged woman who came after her hurriedly paid for her. Then the picture was frozen, and the little girl's face was enlarged until it filled the entire screen. It was then refreshed and restored with ultra-high definition, revealing every detail of the girl's face. She has tender white skin, a round face, and a smooth corner of her right eye. No black spots. 2 streams of blood flowed from Dad's nose and spread all the way to his chin, staining his beard and lips red, leaving winding traces on half of his face. "Samantha!" He looked blankly at the crystal coffin, then at Samantha kneeling on the ground and shouted, "Samantha!" Apart from these 2 words, nothing else can be shouted. Dr. Sam's expression suddenly changed, and he forced him to lie down on his back. He called 120 from his landline. "Samantha's mansion. The patient has a sudden cerebral hemorrhage. The situation is serious. Dad." Samantha's forehead was swollen and she broke down and cried, "Winfield, please save my dad. Please save him." In the chaos of war, Winfield just stared at my skeleton and said to himself, "Retribution. This is the retribution Catherine left for all of us." 35. Once the wall of trust collapses, it is difficult to build it up again. This is something I understood very early on. Several times before I was alive, I couldn't help but show this video in front of them, but as soon as I met my father's disgusted eyes, this impulse was instantly extinguished. I originally planned to send it to him after I went abroad. The relationship between father and daughter was no longer at that time. I couldn't see how he would react and make choices in a foreign country, and I wouldn't be hurt anymore. Maybe I'm still the timid person at heart. Because the wound was too deep, I repeatedly avoided touching it. But fortunately, it doesn't hurt anymore. My funeral was held solemnly, but before that, my soul miraculously did not disappear. Winfield's obsession binds me tightly, even more than when he died. During this period, he first left the company to his younger brother, and then ran around to collect evidence and prosecute Samantha and Stefan. People around him said that he had become mentally ill because of my death. Only Clayton is happy to see it happen. Even when he came to take over the position of chairman, he sarcastically said, "This is what I deserve, brother." Winfield just nodded without losing his temper. The funeral was held as scheduled. There were no offerings in front of my coffin, only 2 thin verdict papers. Samantha and Stefan were sentenced to death for intentional homicide and extortion, and deprived of political rights for life. Dad suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and was paralyzed. The hospital bed was forcibly moved to the front of the mourning hall. His eyes were staring at the ceiling and weeping. Winfield buried me as my husband. The crystal coffin landed on the ground, soil was sprinkled into the grave pit, and my body became more transparent and lighter. When the grave was half filled, Winfield suddenly went crazy and jumped in frantically to dig out my buried coffin with his bare hands. The 2 uncles couldn't stand it, so they tried to pull him out, but they were frightened by the desperate roar. He burst out and backed away. Dust was flying, and countless dust covered Winfield in that small square inch of land. He gasped and fell to his knees, crying and screaming, his face covered with tears and saliva, and every breath seemed to open a bloody wound in his throat. Everyone noticed something strange and hurriedly carried him out, but it was too late. Winfield's eyes were bloodshot, and he lay on the ground convulsively, staring in a certain direction. Suddenly, his eyes rolled, and he looked at me with his canthus cracked. The mouth is open but no sound comes out. But I knew he wanted to call me by my name. "You finally see me, Winfield." I smiled lightly, and my body was shattered into bright sand with light spots by the wind. Winfield burst into tears and stretched out his hand to me with all his strength. However, I turned around and stepped into the void. "Stop chasing me. You'll never catch me." High in the blue sky, a familiar figure with wings was waving gently at me. White flowers were everywhere, holy light was floating, and her smile was as beautiful and gentle as ever. "Mom!" I couldn't help but cry out, my body drifting farther and farther with her call, until it disappears into the horizon.